She stepped on stage, barefoot. No gown, no diamonds. Just a threadbare dress and the kind of silence that makes men hold their breath. A boy in the crowd whispered, "That's the maid." Then she opened her mouth to sing, and the world tilted off its axis. But long before that voice shattered a mansion of mirrors, this all started with a woman named Sylvia Harrison, and a birthday party meant to destroy a life. Sylvia Harrison was the kind of woman who drank champagne before breakfast and made servants cry before noon. She lived in Greenwood Hills, an upscale pocket just outside Los Angeles where no lawn dared grow uneven and no Porsche dared show a scratch. Each morning began with a massage, a facial, and 3 calls to women just like her, brittle smiles with high heels and low hearts. They'd gossip about whose husband was sleeping where and which socialite had gotten, tastefully, too much Botox. It was all perfectly polished cruelty. Sylvia's housekeeper, Catherine Morales, known simply as Kathy, wasn't part of that world. She arrived every day before sunrise, slipping in through the back gate with worn sneakers and a bus pass. Kathy never complained. Not when Sylvia asked her to polish the same vase twice. Not when the hours stretched past dark. She did it all with quiet dignity, a dignity Sylvia mistook for weakness. Kathy's world was different. Small apartment in Eastwood. No dishwasher. No doorman. Just her and Johnny, a boy with big eyes and bigger dreams. She worked so he could live different. Better. That was her fuel. Then came the invitation. Sylvia's 45th, formal attire. Valet included. It arrived folded inside Johnny's school folder, a glossy, gold-edged card that smelled like expensive lies. Kathy read it twice. Sylvia had said she insisted they come. A gesture, she called it. But the truth? It was a trap. Sylvia didn't want them there to honor anyone. She wanted them to be the punchline. A poor woman in a room full of silk, stumbling among champagne glasses and judgment. Kathy knew this. She knew. But Johnny had already seen the card. His eyes lit up like birthday candles. "We're going to a real party, Mama. Like in movies?" Kathy nodded, the lie tasting like metal. "Yes, baby. Like in movies." And so, they went. That night, the Harrison estate shimmered like a dream. Spotlights danced across marble. Valets wore tuxedos. Inside, laughter came in measured tones, nothing too loud, nothing real. The chandelier alone could have paid Kathy's rent for a decade. Sylvia greeted her guests in a gown that cost more than Kathy's yearly salary. Her smile was flawless. Her heart. Less so. "And this," she cooed, holding Kathy by the arm like a trophy pig at a state fair, "is Catherine. She keeps this house standing. Without her, my dear friends, we'd be living in filth." The laughter came, polished and poisonous. Kathy said nothing. "And who's this handsome young man?" Sylvia asked, crouching beside Johnny. He straightened his too short tie. "I'm Johnny." "Oh, what a strong voice. Must run in the family." Then, turning to the crowd, she added with a grin, "Actually, why don't we find out? Kathy, would you grace us with a song?" The room hushed. Champagne paused mid-sip. Cameras lifted. Kathy froze. Sylvia's eyes glittered. "Come now, darling," Sylvia said, "don't be shy." Johnny tugged at his mother's hand. "You can do it, Mama. Just like at church." She looked down at her son. His eyes were full of belief. Hers were full of everything but. But she stepped up. The microphone stood waiting. The silence was loud. Sylvia leaned back with her martini, ready for the show. Then Kathy sang. It wasn't a voice. It was a confession, a fire, a storm wrapped in velvet. She sang, "A change is gonna come," Sam Cooke, raw and pure. But it wasn't mimicry. It was her. Each note carried years of struggle, of holding in every tear, of every meal skipped to keep the lights on. The room stopped breathing. A woman dropped her wineglass. A man wept behind his sunglasses. And in the very back, near the stone archway, stood a tall man in a charcoal suit. His name was Alexander Reed. Producer. Reed Sound Studios. Platinum Records. Scouting that night for new voices. When Kathy finished, there was no applause, only stunned silence. Then Johnny clapped. Then the room joined, a standing ovation that felt more like an awakening. Sylvia Harrison didn't clap. Alexander approached. Miss Morales. I'd like to talk to you about a recording deal. You've got something rare. And real. Kathy blinked. I clean houses. Not anymore. Sylvia walked home that night with a face like marble. Inside, something old and ugly stirred. Her smile had cracked. And all she could think, all she could feel, was one thing. You will not take my stage. And somewhere, deep inside that cold heart, Sylvia Harrison decided that if she couldn't break Kathy Morales with laughter, she'd break her with lies. Fame, even the smallest taste, comes like a flash flood. One day, Kathy was scrubbing baseboards. The next, she was on breakfast television, singing over sunrise reels of downtown LA. The voice no one expected, from a woman no one noticed. Until now. But the world loves to lift you just high enough, to enjoy the fall. Within a month, Kathy had studio time. A 2-track demo. Even a vocal coach, a stern French woman who cried during Kathy's second take. Johnny stayed quiet through it all, watching his mother shine like he always knew she could. He told her, "You sound like a secret everyone just found out." And Kathy smiled, because it was the kind of thing a boy says before the world teaches him silence. But not everyone was smiling. Sylvia Harrison watched it unfold from her high-rise balcony, eyes narrowed over a glass of wine. She'd been invited to 3 talk shows in the weeks following the party. Tell us about your role in discovering Kathy Morales. But she declined every one. There was no glory in being the villain who created a hero. So she called a man. Name, Dennis Rowe. Private investigator. Discreet. Expensive. And dangerous enough to leave footprints on your soul. I need dirt, she said. Rowe lit a cigarette on the other end. What kind of dirt? Whatever buries her. 2 weeks later, Rowe sent over a file. Inside, transcripts, phone logs, and a yellowing incident report from San Diego, dated 2009. Theft. Oak Ridge residence. Suspect, Catherine Morales. Case dismissed. Insufficient evidence. Dismissed, but not forgotten. Sylvia read the report slowly. Then smiled. The press conference was scheduled at the Fairmont Hotel, the same hotel Kathy once passed on her way to clean houses in Beverly Hills. Now she stood behind a podium, shaking hands with producers and stylists, her smile unsure but proud. And then, it hit. A question from the crowd, Miss Morales, can you comment on the theft allegations from Oak Ridge? Silence. Then another voice, do you deny you stole over $10,000 in property from a client in 2009? Kathy's knees buckled. Johnny stood beside her, frozen. Cameras flashed. Her lips moved, but no sound came. A third voice, crueler now, was this all a scam? The maid turned diva act. And that was the moment it all cracked. Overnight, Kathy became a ghost. The demo was shelved. Interviews cancelled. Alexander Reed stopped answering calls, not out of malice, but survival. The music industry doesn't wait for clarity. It feeds on image. And Kathy's had turned toxic. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply worked. Harder than before. She cleaned houses again, even while the papers ran her name like ink across blood. Until she couldn't anymore. One Tuesday morning, Kathy collapsed on the number 47 bus. Johnny called 911 from a borrowed phone. She was taken to County General, room 205, where the nurses whispered and the IVs beeped in rhythm with a life fraying at the edges. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because good people don't always disappear. Sometimes they wait. And sometimes they fight. Laura Jennings was the kind of woman who kept receipts, literally and figuratively. She had worked with Kathy years ago, back when Kathy wore second-hand uniforms and smiled through pain. When she saw the news, she packed a bag, kissed her wife goodbye, and headed to the hospital. She found Kathy half-conscious, whispering Johnny's name. Laura stayed the night. The next morning, she called Richard Monroe. Now, Richard wasn't just a lawyer. He was the lawyer. Former prosecutor, turned civil rights advocate. The kind of man who could eviscerate you with a single clause. But he also owed Laura a favor. Big one. So he showed up. Richard reviewed the Oak Ridge case. It didn't take him long to see the holes. The statements were vague. The timestamps conflicted. And the witness testimonies? All suspiciously aligned, too neat. Too rehearsed. He dug deeper. Then he found the transfer. 3 of the key witnesses had received donations in 2010. Donations processed through a non-profit shell tied to, you guessed it, Sylvia Harrison. It was clever. Almost elegant. But not invisible. Richard closed the file. She bought their silence. Laura leaned forward. Can we prove it? He nodded. Not yet. But we're gonna find someone who'll talk. That night, Kathy whispered through chapped lips, why now? Why me? Johnny held her hand. Because they're scared of you. She didn't believe it. Not really. But she held his hand tighter. Richard's breakthrough came from a florist. A quiet woman named Amelia who once worked the Oak Ridge job. She remembered Kathy. Remembered how the manager tried to pin missing jewelry on her. She didn't do it, Amelia said. But they needed a scapegoat. Mrs. Harwood, she said it had to be someone expendable. Laura stared. Would you testify? The woman hesitated. Then nodded. I'm tired of watching good people burn. And just like that, the match was struck. They wouldn't go back to the tabloids. They'd go straight to the city. Downtown LA. The convention center. Press. Lawyers. Lights. This time, Kathy wouldn't sing. She'd speak. And behind her would stand Truth, a lawyer with fire in his voice, and a boy who'd never let go of her hand. The city lights of Los Angeles don't blink, they burn. They burn through dreams and delusions alike. Kathy sat in a wheelchair by the hospital window, for still in her arm, watching it all. You think they'll believe me? She asked quietly. Richard didn't answer right away. He knew better than to offer comfort without certainty. Instead, he opened a folder. Inside, statements from former Oak Ridge staff, bank transfers, old voice memos, and a list of media contacts ready to hear the other side of the story. He placed the folder on her lap. They'll believe the truth, he said. Because this time, we're bringing proof. Laura worked the phones day and night, calling in favors from reporters, editors, and anyone who'd ever owed her a headline. The name, Sylvia Harrison, started echoing in new circles, not for glamour, but for fraud. And then, a break. A name came forward. Danica Myers, former social media manager for the Harrison Foundation. Young, nervous, and on edge. I quit after I saw what she was doing. She funneled donations through fake charities. Paid off people to say what she wanted. Richard leaned in. Would you be willing to testify? Danica paused, biting her lip. She's powerful. She was, Laura said. Not anymore. Meanwhile, Sylvia sensed something shifting. Her usual friends weren't returning calls. Her stylist cancelled last minute. She called Dennis Rowe. What's going on? Rowe sighed. You're on a list. Investigative press. They're digging. Sylvia's voice turned sharp. You said it was handled. It was quiet. Now it's not. Your old staff's flipping. Lawyers are circling. Sylvia exhaled, long and slow. Then we fight. You can't fight this with parties and perfume, he muttered, before hanging up. She threw the phone into the pool. Back in Eastwood, Kathy was discharged. She returned to her tiny apartment, still half-furnished, her name smeared across every screen. But when she walked through the door, something was waiting. Johnny had made a sign. Cardboard. Handwritten. It said, "Welcome home, superstar." She didn't cry. She just hugged him, long and hard, and said, "Let's clean up this place. We've got guests coming." The press conference was set. Downtown LA Convention Center. Thursday at noon. Invitations sent. Press vetted. Statements rehearsed. Kathy sat in the green room, pale but steady. Laura stood beside her. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. Kathy nodded. It's about Johnny. About never being afraid again. Then she stepped out. The room was full. Journalists. Activists. Curious onlookers. A few musicians. And in the very back, unknown to Kathy, Alexander Reed himself had taken a seat. She walked to the podium. Cleared her throat. And spoke. She told them about the Oak Ridge job. About being accused, knowing she was innocent, and walking away because the world wasn't built to believe poor brown women over rich white ones. She told them about the music, the night of the party, and what happened next, not in pitch or melody, but in fact. Then Richard stepped up, presenting bank records, timelines, and sworn affidavits. One by one, the lies fell apart. And then Danica took the mic. Nervous. Shaking. But she spoke. I was paid to edit reports, alter donation logs, and redirect funds. Sylvia Harrison used my name to silence people. I quit because I couldn't sleep anymore. Silence. And then a rustle at the back of the room. 2 men in plain suits entered. Police. They walked down the aisle as Kathy turned, blinking in disbelief. Then came the flashbulbs. The gasps. And the words. Mrs. Sylvia Harrison, you are under arrest for conspiracy to defraud, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. They read her rights as the crowd parted. Sylvia didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just looked at Kathy, and for the first time, there was no smugness in her eyes. Only fear. Outside, the press swarmed. Inside, Kathy stood still. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She looked at her son. And whispered, "We're free." But the story wasn't over. Because justice might clear your name. But healing? That's something else entirely. Sylvia was booked that same afternoon. Fraud. Witness tampering. Conspiracy. She said nothing. Refused the orange jumpsuit. Paid for a private holding suite. That wouldn't last long. Judges don't like arrogance. Especially not from the rich and dirty. Her attorney, Vincent Crane, tried everything. Delay, deflect, deny. Character assassination, he said on camera. This is a smear campaign. But the evidence? It hit like a train. Records. Deposits. Audio clips. And the final nail? A phone call. 2 years earlier, Sylvia had left a voicemail for a foundation partner, one whose daughter she tried to blackmail into silence. Richard played that voicemail on a loop for the press. Do what you're told. Or I'll make sure your little ballerina gets her scholarship pulled so fast her tute'll catch fire. That wasn't business. That was threat. And it changed everything. Meanwhile, Kathy didn't chase fame. She stayed quiet. Focused. Johnny was back in school. Grades up. Back to drawing superheroes in his sketchpad. The record labels started calling again. But Kathy took only one meeting, with Alexander Reed, in a small cafe, no cameras. No contracts. Just people. He said, "We can do this your way now." She said, "I'm not a brand. I'm a mother who sings." And he nodded. Then let's make the world listen. Sylvia's empire began to crumble piece by piece. Her name was pulled from 2 charities. Board membership suspended. And the guests who once toasted her parties now avoided her like a plague. Even her old friends, those with perfect smiles and terrible hearts, whispered behind her back like jackals circling a wounded lioness. The media dubbed it the Harrison collapse. One tabloid read, "From Queen to Convict." Another, "The Maid Who Sang Too Loud." But Kathy didn't read headlines anymore. She wrote lyrics instead. Then came the trial. 3 weeks. Witness after witness. Danica. Amelia. Even a man from Oak Ridge, the old night janitor who had been told to keep quiet or lose your job. He remembered Kathy's tears. He remembered how they told him to lie. And now. He told the truth. Sylvia sat stone-faced, only her nails tapping the table. Her lawyers fought hard. But truth? Truth doesn't flinch. The verdict came on a Friday. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing in 6 weeks. Sylvia didn't cry. But she aged 10 years that afternoon. Her estate went into liquidation. Cars. Art. The marble horse statue in the foyer. Gone. Even her private gym was stripped for parts. Sylvia Harrison, once a goddess of Greenwood Hills, now faced prison in a plain suit. No diamonds. No servants. Just time. And regret. Kathy didn't attend the sentencing. She was at the beach with Johnny. They watched the waves. She said, "You know what I hear in the ocean?" Johnny shrugged. She said, "Nothing. That's the point." And for the first time in months, she smiled without pain. But one thing remained. Closure. So she held a concert, not a grand stage, not a big label event. Just a charity night, in the Eastwood Community Center. Every seat filled. Neighbors. Nurses. People who once walked by her without seeing her at all. Johnny introduced her. He said, "This is my mom. She's the strongest person I know. And when she sings, you'll understand why." And Kathy walked up. Simple black dress. One spotlight. One mic. She sang, "The change is gonna come, again." But this time. She sang it free. And in the front row, Laura and Richard stood with their hands on their hearts. And in the very back, unnoticed by most, Alexander Reed wiped a tear from his eye. 6 months passed. Sylvia Harrison sat in a women's correctional facility outside Barstow. A place where the sun was too bright, and nobody cared what kind of purse you used to carry. She kept to herself. Ate quietly. Never asked for favors. But she wasn't forgotten. 2 publishers reached out. Memoirs, they asked. Redemption. She refused. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't know what to say. Across the coast, Kathy Morales moved into a quiet home near Santa Monica. Nothing fancy. One story. White fence. A real backyard, something she'd never had growing up. Johnny got a dog. Named him Shadow. He started writing his own music. Gritty little chords. A boy with calluses and purpose. Kathy began recording again. But this time, no makeup. No executives. Just a home studio, a keyboard, and a voice carved from pain and patched with hope. Her album dropped under one name only. Kathy. No last name. No filters. Just the woman. The first single, Still Standing, wasn't played on Top 40. It didn't chart. But it went viral in places that mattered. Nursing homes. Community centers. Barbershops and soul kitchens. People who knew struggle felt it like an old friend knocking at the door. Then came a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, 5 words on a piece of paper. I remember. I'm sorry. E. Kathy didn't need to guess. E was Elaine, the head maid at Oak Ridge. The one who'd stood silently as Kathy was accused. The one who looked away when Kathy cried. She folded the note. Didn't cry. Just said, took you long enough. But the real surprise came 3 weeks later, at a small coffeehouse gig in Venice Beach. Kathy performed monthly now. Low-key. No tickets. No press. Just locals and love. That night, Johnny played guitar behind her. They sang together, Mama's Voice, a song he'd written for her birthday. The last line always made her blink hard. When the world said I was nothing, you told me I was fire. The applause was soft. Honest. Then a woman stood in the back. Gray coat. Faded scarf. Eyes trembling. Kathy saw her and stopped breathing. Elaine stepped forward, hands shaking. I came, to hear you sing. And to say. I should have protected you. I didn't. I was scared. The crowd fell silent. Kathy walked off the stage. She stood before her old accuser, her old ghost. And said, I know. Elaine choked on tears. I'm sorry. Kathy didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, you're just on time. They hugged. No flashbulbs. No cameras. Just people. Later that night, Kathy and Johnny walked the beach barefoot. The moon hung low. Do you still get scared? Johnny asked. Every day, she said. But not of people like Sylvia anymore. Now. I'm just scared of losing myself again. He nodded. You won't. She looked out across the waves. You know, she said, I think we finally made it. And Johnny, now taller than her, said, we did, Mama. We really did. Sylvia Harrison never returned to society. After her sentence, she moved to a cabin upstate. Alone. No parties. No mirrors. Some say she watches Kathy's performances online. Some say she weeps. Others say she feels nothing at all. But Kathy? She lives. And not just lives, thrives. Her music? It's raw and real. Unfiltered. Grit and grace. And somewhere, on a quiet street in Santa Monica, if you pass just at the right hour, you might hear a voice float through the open window. No auto-tune. No lights. Just truth. And the sound of a woman who refused to stay silent. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.